e-discovery seems to dominate this industry, and rightfully so. That's where a lot of things are heading. That's where a lot of our industry is going. I was telling somebody today, when you go to an in-case conference, I think 80% of that conference is geared towards e-discovery, and you might have 20% towards forensics. So it's good to see a lot of forensic people. And again, I am counting on y'all to jump in and have discussions today. I think my presentation was challenges in the future of data acquisitions. And mainly, Bill had come to the office of the day, and we were talking a little bit about this. And one reason it's kind of fresh on my mind is the GBI recently, like within the last week or so, went out on a Operation Restore Hope project. And I don't know if you saw it on the news, but basically what that does is we have an Internet Crimes Against Children task force, and it involves law enforcement agencies throughout the state. What we did is we had done some peer-to-peer investigations where we had identified 95 targets across the state as being sharing child pornography. So we were trying to target these people. What we wanted to do, because we really wanted to make a big splash, and that's what they like to do on these projects, we like to have the media available, and we're, a big show. We have a command center and all this stuff like that. We actually went out on 50 search warrants throughout the state. There's about 7 of us in my group, so obviously we weren't able to do it all. We had Secret Service, Postal, and a couple other federal agencies with us as well. However, what our group was faced with, the challenge that we were faced with, is what are you going to see when you go out there? And we were spread out throughout the state. We had people as far north as you could go, and we had people as far south. So when you left headquarters that day, you better be ready for anything that you're going to see out in the field. And so it's kind of brought it fresh on my mind as to what challenges we might have when we go out. And a lot of you as well, I know you hit these different businesses and you don't really know. David knows what's in Home Depot, and he's familiar. He knows the operating systems and machines and so forth. But a lot of times when you're going out in the field, you don't know what you're going to see. And that's kind of what I want to go over today, some different things that are coming up. And one is the cloud computing. I feel like that's going to be a big challenge for us. You probably feels like getting ready
That's okay.
to jump in with this anytime. We have not actually gone to a business where cloud computing has been an issue, but I know it's out there, and as a supervisor, I want to get us ready. I want to know what our challenges are going to be when we hit the business and they say, oh, well, all our data is stored, either in another country or another state. So that's the kind of issue, so I want to talk about that. Virtual machines. Go out on a search warrant. This has happened more than once. Go out, you walk in the server room, you see your typical stuff, and they say, well, we're running 40 virtual machines out of here. What do we do? So that's going to be, and that has happened before, and it happened actually in this time. Generally speaking, in these type of situations, we go to residents, and that's what we're looking at. However, we had a couple of IT engineers, and we knew they were before we got there, and we knew that would be a little bit more of a challenge for us, just because they're not going to tell you, I don't even know how to delete a file. I don't know how to turn on a computer. It couldn't be me. We didn't think we'd get that excuse. We walked in, it was an apartment. These individuals, there's 2 guys, kind of commute. They live there in the week, and then they commute back to Atlanta on the weekends. So you walk into a bare apartment, you got a bed, a table, and this big server rack. And really, are you serious? And that's what they were doing, is they were setting up the virtual machines to keep up with their certifications. So they were using the server, a couple of bay type stacks in there, and the storage had the arrays in there and so forth. So that they were using the virtual machines, and in the same token, can you search child porn while you're doing all this? Yeah. I don't want to say they got bored during the week and they didn't have anything else to do, so maybe they got a little carried away, but so you do see these different things when you're going out. Another thing I want to talk about, and I don't want to get too far out, but I can tell you about some topics here. Next is the memory dumping, the memory acquisitions. We're doing a lot more of that, where when we go out, you're seeing machines with 8, 16, however many gigs of memory, and you need to capture that information because it could be relevant, it could be important, especially determining depending on what type of investigation, if you're doing like an internet hacking or something like that, you want to know the processes that are running in there. You got a missing kid, you know, what was she doing or he doing on the computer, which may still be stored out in memory. You pull that plug, which is the traditional means of forensics, you pull the plug, that memory's gone. So that's becoming a new challenge for us, is to make sure that we're actually capturing the memory when we go out on site. Again, I'm not as in tune with the e-discovery world, so I'm not sure if y'all are as concerned about that as we are, but that might be something that you need to consider. And last, and this is just because we got a MacBook yesterday, so I'm like, really? So that's kind of come up in my mind lately, just because a lot, and I'm starting to see, and I just looked over and you're sitting there with a Mac, I'm like, this is perfect. Because normally we did not see a lot of Macs here, especially in Georgia. I mean, everybody was Windows and so forth, but we're really starting to see, and the Mac that I'm talking about, we got from a 15-year-old kid, so it wasn't even this really, he may have been a little bit techy, but I don't think that's what he was doing. He just happened to have a Mac. I guess his parents could afford it, or he wanted it, or whatever, but for whatever reason, he had a MacBook. And then I was looking at some research on those MacBook Air, and we're seeing some more of those out there. We're having to deal with that situation, is how are we going to image those? There's not even a FireWire target mode anymore for those. And then a lot of times people are running the parallels where they're running the Windows on top of the Macs. So there's no longer, when you do the FireWire target mode, plug it into your in case, because you're probably, if you do that, you're going to mount the Windows hard drive if you do that. So we were trying to work with that a little bit. Oh, another issue that we have going out is that it's the old material. You know, you go out there and you've got a server that nobody's replaced. It's, 1985. And they're still using all that old hardware and that old equipment. So when we go out on these search warrants, especially to arrest us, we got to make sure, if you use Helix to do your imaging, you use Helix 3, a lot of these machines can't boot Helix because they don't have enough memory in there to boot Helix 3. So we're finding that we got to have Helix 1.7, 1.9, you got to have Raptor, you got to have the new Helix, and so forth. So we might get into that a little bit. And actually, when we all got back from Restore Hope the next morning, of course, everybody's standing there, and you got to tell your freak stories. I mean, when you go out on the stuff, you got good freak stories, and everybody wants to tell them. And I said, okay, just everybody stop, because they're kind of pocketing here and there. So stop. We're just going to have one big story time. Get your coffee. We're all going to come together, and we're all going to sit down and not only tell your freak story, but how did it work out? What did you see forensically and other things. But the mistake that I made is I didn't take an external floppy drive. What did I see? I mean, I already got the guy. I found what I wanted to find on the computer, but sitting right there, right in front of him, was the floppy that says PIX download. Did I want to get in there? Yes, I did. Did I bring my external floppy? No, I could have kicked myself for that. But that's kind of, the things that you got to remember. Your external CD drives, again, the Mac, you don't have the FireWire target mode anymore. You need to boot with a CD, so you have to put your external CD in there. You also maybe have to put your USB hub, because you need another drive to image to as well. So there's the kind of things that